Hello, I'm Roland Davis and I'm Director of the British Council in Zimbabwe, and I want to briefly introduce you to you today the Next Generation report that we've just completed and we're about to launch this January. Next Generation is a research program that we conduct around the world on a regular basis in many countries across Asia, South America and Sub-Saharan Africa. Next Generation is really about understanding what young people think, what young people want. It's a research into their ambitions, their goals, their aspirations, but also some of the challenges that they see. We very much encourage people, whether you're in government, you're in the private sector, you're any kind of organisation that works with young people, perhaps in education, to really look at what this report says. There is ambition, there is certainly aspiration, there is hope, but there's a very clear-sighted view from young people about what the challenges are and some of the frustrations that they feel. So it's a really grounded view of what young people actually say and want, and too often the voice of young people is ignored. Well, here's an example, a very clear voice for young people. So whatever organisation you're involved in, if you're interested in what young people have to say, we very much encourage you to read it and to think about how you might respond as an organisation. That's certainly what we are doing in the British Council. So I really commend this report to you.
It's really been a very exciting process, as it were, and also we're just listening to some of the discussions going on over the tea break as well. This is really quite exciting, and getting young people from different sort of spaces coming together. This is an exciting opportunity. Thank you so much, British Council and partners, for doing this. Fantastic. So I have a bit of feedback on the mic. Right. Okay. So I have my esteemed panelists here that I know personally, so I will not fall to my own biases around how and who I know them as. I'll give them an opportunity for 2-3 lines of very quick self-introductions, and then we'll pick up the discussion. So the title of the panel conversation we're going to be having is Zimbabwe, Youth in Zimbabwe at 40, Looking Forward. So we've had the very in-depth and concise empirical study that has just been, that we've just launched, and that has also just been given highlights of, and the discussions to that also continue. So we're saying, through all of this, as we reflect on the challenges, as we reflect on some of the difficulties and all of that, how then do we reprogram, how do we reorient to think towards where next then for young people? Where are the next steps? What are the exciting things that are coming up in the future? What are the things we need to be thinking of now that the youth conversations have been going on for this year up to 40 years? So this will be the inclination of the discussion we'll be having. Where next for young people in Zimbabwe? What are the exciting things? What are the things we need to be looking out for going forward? Great. So should I start right from my very extreme left?
Okay, hi everyone. A pleasure being on this panel, and thank you to British Council for picking us up to be part of the task force, as well as giving us the platform to be here today. Zimbabwe at 40. For me, it's we've done a lot of research already. I think Zimbabwe Youth Council has done a lot of work, YET has done a lot of work, Government Ministry of Youth has done a lot of work, NAYO has done a lot of work. For me, I think now we need to move to the next step. We know what the challenges for young people are. Let's now go to the action, practical solutions. We've already researched. What next? What do we do with what we know? So yes, that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Juliana. Opening remarks as well. Just quick intro and then remarks.
Good morning to all of you. My name is Rosalita Katsande. I'm from the Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust yet, and I'm the Executive Director. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation to share thoughts, perspectives in terms of what we need to do differently. I think from the research findings that were presented, sometimes you get to get more of the challenges that young people are facing. But I think moving forward, young people need to change the narrative and also to be able to identify opportunities and be able to change their situation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rose. Lynette.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lynette Munjoma from the Ministry of Youth, Sport, Arts and Recreation. Zimbabwe at 40, what are the opportunities for young people? I think young people have a lot to look forward to. Young people are the ones who are taking charge of developing the nation. Young people have the opportunities, young people have the skills, and young people are being empowered to take charge. I'm looking forward to Zimbabwe at 40.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Lynette. Mishek.
Thank you very much, Chalton. My name is Mishek Gondo. I'm from the National Association of Youth Organizations and also the youth sector representative with NANGO, which is an umbrella body of NGOs in Zimbabwe. Today we have a very special discussion, especially after launching such a report, among other reports that have been alluded to. And it's very important that we realize that as young people, we constitute the larger percentage with regard to national population. So we need to find a common ground to lobby for our issues. We need to be solution-oriented. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, what are these things that you continue referring to as we're looking forward to, we need to be solutions-oriented? What are the exciting things that are going on, and what sort of possibilities are there? And as also the study was being presented, I was also just wondering at some point with the issues of inclusion of young people with disabilities. For instance, there was a huge discussion I liked about the rural-urban divide and things like that. When you look at the whole spectrum of young people, what are these issues? What's been going on, and where are we going? I think if we can have a discussion around this, also based on the respective experiences that our organizations have been having. What's exciting looking forward?
I think so far what has been exciting and what has government noticed is that young people have the hope, young people feel they are part of the solution. And it's exciting, and you can engage people who are willing to be engaged. Young people are willing to be engaged going forwards. Young people also are part of the solutions. Ministry has been engaging in youth leadership programs. You see the excitement that young people have. It's exciting to see them wanting to take charge, as I said before. So going forwards, I think we need to start investing in young people to take the opportunities that are available to them and to invest in their aspirations. So it's exciting as that.
To share a perspective on the work that we are doing as the Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust, we are a youth networking organization, and we're doing work around ensuring that young people are involved in all aspects of development. So we have been doing work around knowledge generation, where we conduct youth-led action research to really find out what are the youth issues and what the different stakeholders can be able to do to address the youth issues. I'm very excited to share with you that last year we also did a comprehensive youth research where we're just analyzing the situation of young people in terms of the political, social and economic aspects. So we also have a report that also, identified issues around youth demographics. We're also looking at youth work and employment, youth citizen and rights. The research also speaks to youth and health, youth food security and resilience, youth information and communications, youth and migration, and also emerging issues from marginalized or key populations. So I'm very excited to say from this research, we also were able to get insights in terms of what are the youth issues, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities. So I think the research also helps us as an organization and even different stakeholders to also say, as we do our programming, as we are able to respond to youth issues, we make sure that we are responsive, it's evidence-based. And also as an organization, we are also doing initiatives where we also want to push and also ensure that young people have a voice. Young people, we also increase the agents of young people. So we've been doing work around creating platforms for young people to interface with duty bearers at community level, at national level, pushing for young people to participate in electoral processes, to participate in other development processes that will be happening, be it at community level, at national level, be it processes that are driven by parliament. So the whole idea is that how then do we keep on ensuring that we have increased voice and agents of young people. So my own analysis in terms of moving forward, I think one, we really need to ensure that we involve young people in decision making and design interventions that we have young people included. I think in as much as young people face these challenges, in as much as young people are marginalized, I think they know what they want. So we really have to involve them in decision making, and it has to be genuine involvement, because often at times it's sometimes it's tokenist, you just go do consultations, but let's have young people leading the development processes. I also believe that young people are torch bearers in determining their own destiny. We will need to do a lot of investment and also focus on ensuring that we develop young people as leaders. I think as a country, we need young people to be able to take up leadership in the different sectors. Because often at times we think that when we talk of leadership, it's about you being an MP, it's about you occupying political space. But I think as young people, there's room for them to be able to take up the leadership position. How do we work more around that so that we have young people that can be able to take up space? And I'm always telling young people to say, when it comes to you being involved, sometimes you have to take the initiative. You have to make yourself, and also ensure that you sit on the table, and you have to sit at the top of the table. So, you know, I just want to also say, moving forward, it's also about young people realizing that when it comes to leadership, we have to work for that. We have to stand up and claim our space. I'll speak to the last point, and I can add more perspectives later on. We need to also ensure that we have an active youth citizenry. And I think we also need to broaden our concepts around participation. When we also carried out this research, and also from the work that we do, often at times when we talk of participation, it's linking young people participating in elections as voters, but we need to see how young people how we can identify other forms of youth participation, be it at community and national level. Yeah, so I'll end here and add more points later on.
Great. Thank you very much. Before I take either Juliana or Mishek, one of the things that has been coming out as you colleagues were just speaking now, issues of investing in youth. What does this actually mean? What sort of investments in youth initiatives have been happening out there with challenges that have been going on even around funding? What have been some of the dynamics in terms of support to youth, various forms of youth initiatives, if they can also be a reflection as the other colleagues are weighing in? Yeah. Maybe I could just jump to Michelle.
Okay. Thank you very much, and I concur with the previous speaker. We have also done a study, but through what we call a youth development model. And this youth development model has been recently adopted by the Southern Africa Youth Forum, which is an amalgamation of youth organizations in SADC. The idea is to single out the definition of young people. Because if you look at the past, there have been a blanket interventions regarding to young people. So if you are looking at young people, what we need to take into account is young people, they are a diverse group. Young people, we have young people with disabilities. They've got different needs with young people who are students at colleges, or young people who are students in schools. We have young people in business. We have young people that are in civic society. We have young people in churches. All those definitions. We came out with about 16 definitions of young people within the context of Zimbabwe. So if you have that definition, that you'll be able to highlight what are the needs that are focused to those young people. If you go to the young people in business and you tell them about the need for them maybe to give them basic skills, they say, I'm already running my business. I can even give the skills. So if you are mapping that, so that is very important. But coming to the point also that you have alluded to, the issue of investment in youth. Investment in youth also through the youth development model does not only start on resources. That has been the dilemma that we have been living as a country. That's why you see for the past interventions that we have in Zimbabwe, we have failed, like the youth program that give loans, because they think by giving loans, young people are empowered. The investment youth start from identifying the needs of the youth, giving them adequate skills. They know not every young person is an entrepreneur, But some of them, even if they are an entrepreneur, they are entrepreneurs in sports. They are not entrepreneurs in terms of the business that we know of buying and selling. They are entrepreneurs in arts. They are talented in singing. How best can we invest in them? So that's investment in youth. The second stage of investing in young people is after realizing that. She's talked about leadership development. Everyone who is leading an initiative needs to be a leader. You are a leader of your family, you are a leader of an intervention. Then that development investment in youth, it will lead to the second point that I want to allude to, the issue of policies. Yeah. Investment in youth is able for young people to understand the policies and the laws of their country. And they'll be able to participate effectively, whether in constitutional processes, whether in policy making, whether in policy contribution. At the same time doing various things that they are doing in their corners as business people, as arts people, but also they are participating with regard to this. I'm very happy recently the ministry, as my point of departure for now, have started the process of reviewing the policy, the Zimbabwe youth policy. So if we have this category of young people, knowing that we have young people in rural areas, young people in peri-urban areas, we'll be able to reach them to say this is what we are talking about. So that when we come to the level of implementation, they were there from the level of participation. And even in terms of electoral processes, they will start to participate. So it's about stages and stages until we reach a point where we say we have got an emancipated young people.
This is interesting. I'm just thinking, just as we're ending, you raised something quite interesting around issues of policy. If you remember earlier on, there was a submission from the colleague from the Embassy of Sweden who said young people are also not even aware of the existence of the youth policy itself and processes that are going on around it, and to say, okay, what makes the legal and the policy basis for our existence as young people and also our call for empowerment and all of that. I thought that was an interesting position that the colleague raised. So I wanted to just come down then to Juliana on two perspectives. One of them being with the Zimbabwe Youth Council and the recent processes that you colleagues have been going through in terms of the review of the policy. I would love to hear a lot more about your experiences. What have been experiences around that? And also, having been on the Next Gen task force as well, what were some of your experiences and the young people you're interacting with? And even as you're thinking through this process, what can other young people also learn from that? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Being at the Zimbabwe Youth Council has also opened up avenues and access to young people to participate in the process, as well as being on the task force has also opened up my mind to different perspectives and narratives that young people have brought about, because there are two different dimensions when you come and you speak from a government perspective and you're speaking from this other perspective where we've got young people are not a homogeneous group, so you've got the different dimensions that are there. What I just then realized is that there's a lot of enthusiasm as well as a lot of apathy. When we were doing the research for the National Youth Policy, you would have two groups, the ones that knew what they were dealing with, and then the majority of the young people, as Meshach has said, are not aware of these policies, which actually opened us to a whole different dimension where we say there's the Youth Council as the interface between government and the young people. We need to find ways of disseminating information, engaging young people, and move away from the traditional ways of grouping young people or saying, Trukenda, Kwadwe Tito, and we're going to meet young people. There are other young people that are in other provinces that actually don't even know what's happening. How do we engage them? How do we keep them plugged in? How do we make them not shy away from government and think, so there is a lot of need to collaborate and find innovative ways of engaging with these young people.
It's interesting you actually say this. During our days, what was one of the main arguments? There was always a contestation between young people in civic spaces and government, because for us the argument was we are not being given our space, so we're demanding our space and we're saying, okay, government has not been doing enough of this, we want our space and all of that. But over the past couple of years, we've also seen improvement in the relationship between particularly the ministry and Zimbabwe Youth Council, with also the youth various sectors of young people. I'm more interested in saying, okay, how do we strengthen these relationships? How do we get young people to trust the ministry a lot more? How do we get young people to believe that if Lynette is coming to speak to young people, she has the interests of young people at heart? How do we get, I know there have also been challenges around issues of youth coordination. I know Nayo has done a lot of work. I know Youth Council has also done a lot of work. How do youth groups, youth associations get to find each other? For me, I think this is a very critical aspect, I think, that I would want yourselves as practitioners to also maybe just quickly reflect on. Yeah.
I think I'm here to being the person that then plays that role between government and young people. I want the youth organizations themselves to let us know how we can better the relationship. Over the past weeks, I'm happy to say we've been trying to engage, and YET has been one of our first, where we're trying to find ways of collaboration and making sure the youth space is better, how we avoid scattered efforts. But I think I'm here more to listen when this question comes through, how they think we can better the space.
Fantastic. What I'm also going to be doing shortly is to then open up the discussion one more time, so that it's more about us as young people. Our panelists as practitioners, as our experts, they're just prodding the thinking and leading us. But once I just take this round from them, I'm also then going to open it up to all of us, and then we can be part of the discussion as well. Rose.
Okay. I think it's important to have collaborations between government, the Ministry of Youth, Zimbabwe Youth Council, and other stakeholders that are into youth programming. I think the collaboration is very important, because if you look at the different mandates, when you talk of policy, it's the responsibility of the government. Civil society, they also have their own strength, weaknesses, their own strength, maybe in terms of research, reaching out to young people. So the issue of collaborations are very key. But I also think that what we also need in the youth sector is also to see how we are also better organized, how we can also say the young people that we are working with in the various communities, the different organizations, the initiatives that are being done by government, how to also ensure that when we reach out to young people, we speak with one voice. So I think the issue of coordination, being more organized, being able to speak with one voice is very, very critical. And I also believe that there is also opportunity or room for these players to be able to come together and also maybe define what is the youth agenda, and it should be more of a transformational youth agenda. And I also wanted to say, just to also comment on the earlier reflections from colleagues, to say when we talk also of collaborations, I think we also need to ensure that it's also holistic. We talk of collaborations with government, with civil society organizations. We also have to make sure that we work with the private sector, because some of the challenges that were being raised, I think it does have a bearing, and we also need support from the private sector. When you talk of education, when you talk of young people, when you talk of youth employment, so we also need to make sure that our collaborations, they are also holistic. And in terms of support to the youth sector, I think moving forward, we also need to ensure that our support is integrated, so that it also addresses the diverse needs of young people. Based on the work that we've been doing, we've noted that often at times you get support to do work on youth leadership. For example, you're doing work on young people participating in their community processes. But when you then talk to the young people, they are saying, of course, we want to be leaders, but we are hungry. We don't have jobs. Can you do something about this? We also have to take cognizance of the other challenges that young people face, access to education, access to health, issues around food shortages. So what it means at the end of the day, we need to have integrated programming, and also to make sure that there are linkages between these players, government, civil society, private sector, so that when we go into a community, our programming is very holistic, in the sense that you are touching aspects of leadership, you are talking of advocacy, you are addressing issues of young people with regards to the economic aspects. You go there and talk about sexual and reproductive health rights, you talk about issues around education. So I think we need to change the narrative and also have a paradigm shift in terms of how we program, because if you go there, talk about education, you come back, but these other needs, they also need to be addressed. So I think we need to move more towards issues of having integrated youth programming. Lastly, I want to comment on the issue of young people not being knowledgeable of the constitution of the National Youth Policy. The study that we did also confirmed that there are low levels of knowledge among young people. For example, 17 of the young people that we reached out to, only 17.5% were saying they know about the constitution. 5% they knew about the National Youth Policy. For me, it's something that is frightening. So if you are going to say we want to work with young people to have a voice, to be able to claim their rights, how are they going to be able to do that if they don't know what the Constitution says? So what we need to do more work to do is work around constitutional literacy. And I think we need to change our strategies. When we reach out to young people about the Constitution, about the National Youth Policy, about the budget, I think we need to do it in a very creative and youth-friendly manner. Because often at times you go into a community, you're talking to this young person about section so and so of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We need to be able to break down and also ensure that young people do understand these provisions. And it's also equally important to also ensure that when you talk about the Constitution, the National Youth Policy, whatever policy framework, how then do we link it to the lived realities of young people? So let's say, for example, you're talking of the right of education. If you're conversing with a student, how then do you break it down so that they can say, oh, this is how these rights or these constitutional issues affect me as a young person. So once we are able to do that, I think we also have young people who are politically conscious, who can be able to question, who can able to critique and even contribute in the policy discourse. So we also need to work around and also even try doing things differently. Ask critical questions. What spaces do we find young people in? What forms of information dissemination do we use that are youth friendly?
Fantastic. Maybe I go to the next one.
Thank you, Charlton. More often, it seems like we are in competition, especially in the youth development sector. One is doing this, one who also wants to come do the same thing, leaving other areas where are critical to young people. So I think, as the two last speakers have alluded to, there is need for us to integrate our activities into the community so that we leave a whole young person who's got access to education, a whole young person who's knowledgeable about their sexual and reproductive health and rights, a young person who can access the services who can ask and access the services that they need, be it in hospitals, be it in other service providers by government and other service providers. We leave a young person who's able to identify their needs and be able to take up the opportunities that are there. So more often it's not there. It looks like we are in competition. Now one is doing this, one is doing this, and we all want to run to places and programs that have more money. And also more often, we often leave young people not fully developed. We touch on this and then we leave them. So I think going forward, there is need for us to integrate and ensure that if we touch on something, if we touch on an area, then we exhaust everything to enable that young person to be developed. And I'm also going forwards, there is need for us to look at multi-sectoral approach into dealing with young people. Young people are not homogeneous, as what has been said. There is need for us to be inclusive. What are the young women's needs? What are the young men's needs? More often, young women programming has more money. Everyone runs there. We don't include the young men. We create more problems. So we need to be inclusive at the same time. How much are we taking into consideration climate change in our programming? We need to also include that, because by doing one program, we may be creating more programs. We need to be inclusive like that. So it's exciting to note that we as youth development practitioners are noticing that and are willing to solve the challenges young people are facing.
Yeah, thank you very much. With regard to one department, the Zimbabwe Youth Council, which is our overall coordinator, that it has opened up avenues now. That's why you are seeing movements in terms even of excitement of young people participating in policy, excitement in laws, and also contributing with regard to participation. When Minister Kesty came to, as a minister, we assembled a group of young people that met with him to discuss some of the past challenges that were happening in the youth fraternity. I cited the opening because if you look at the past, the young people, the Ministry of Youth itself was heavily politicized. So it was more like an extension of a political party, of which this has scared a lot of young people that I have described to say, if a young person who does not want partisan politics, you will not find value by participating in a certain ministry that maybe one a political player from party can define. So you have seen this in the ministry and the Zimbabwe Youth Council changing in terms of participation of every young person with regard to what is enshrined in the Constitution. And also what has been hindering coordination is that aspect of trust that I've alluded to. Then the issue of, if you go even to rural areas, I think most of us, if not all of us, we know that in terms of the civic society, in terms of other areas, there were no go areas for participation. And the government by then, they defined young people as a very dangerous homogeneous group. If empowered or get information, they might later maybe turn against the government or something else. So this is not a secret in regard to the body politic, in terms of politics of our country, just citing a history to say if you go to rural areas, actually you need to inform the president's office, you need to go to police, you need to form, they were called what? Youth officers. You know, youth officer will just come in a meeting and say this meeting will not go. But this is an empowerment. But if you look at right now, if you face any challenges at community level and inform ZYC, whatever department that wants to stop you, we have got a very good one of our members in Mutasa, that they were actually supported by a letter to do their program. So this is the body of government that where we can start going forward. Then in terms of working with the government, I think we had also had, recently we started working with Zimbabwe Youth Council with regard to sustainable development goals. And we have a forum in Vic Falls where we are lobbying for 25% to attend, led by the Zimbabwe Youth Council, whereby also we need to look at rural areas. And previously, there was interim poverty reduction paper, where, here I'm talking of the Ministry of Finance, having approached the assets now, and working together in terms of outreach of that interim poverty. So those are the things that we want to see, removing, where we put aside the politics to the political parties, but government issues should be developmental. That is also my last quote to young people. We should define things that brings us together. I'm from ZANU-PF, you are from MDC, you are from Mabambo. But when we are talking of employment, both of us we face challenges of unemployment. If we are talking of our land which is being taken, recently there is a wave that is happening across cities. Recreational centers are being taken, those that belongs to young people. And if you go to Mbare, someone tendered my grounds. You know, taking the whole ground for we don't know whether it's the council or the government. Those are some things young people need to unite and fight against. If you go to Sunningdale, we mapped. There is a park that has been taken and there's a private business building there. So those are some of the things that affect us, where we say, apart from political parties, apart from ideologies that we have, what are the issues that we need to look for? If we unite as young people to say, in parliament, we are not accepting 10 seats. We are the 67% of total population. We need mechanism policy that allows people to participate. Then you see that the government will start to respond because we are a united front. They are hearing that from a political party wing, from Party A and Party B. They are hearing it from the churches and civil society. So this is the basis of coordination. Then we feed into our ministry.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Julian, do you want to come in? This is quite interesting. Two things there. Issues of trust. I think this is important. And how do we get a common youth agenda, a common developmental youth agenda? You know something Capes, you know something Dynamos. But can I talk my warriors, Yeah, this is the sort of thinking. I can have you guys comment. I'll come to us just now, yeah.
Yeah, quite pleasing. Thank you to hear that ZYC people now see that government is at least trying to change the narrative. Also, just to add on, recently government established youth desks so that there is a youth-centric programming in all the ministries, and they can also follow up in terms of what government departments, ministries have done in terms of giving back to young people in terms of their programming. So young people should, I think we should keep on hammering, as Mishak has said, one voice. The only way we can have them there to see my 10 seats I could 20 is by rallying behind our own. So let us leave no one behind. When we speak with one voice, tikauya takawanda chinzwa kuti zetwaisi tikuda kuti mudaiwo nesuwo tinonyarawo. So one voice, young people.
I also agree with my other colleagues to say in terms of the trust and also making sure that young people will speak with one voice. It's also around, the ability to be able to identify what are the youth aspiration needs, where, what vision do we have, as young people, what vision do we have for the future? And then we can be able to identify a common thread that can bring us together and be able to say we are pushing this as young people. I think, from the research, from the conversations, you agree with me, young people want, a better lives in terms of them getting jobs, creating jobs, participating in political and social processes. So it's also around how then do we have young people having that clarity to say what is their agenda that we are pushing. And I think it's also equally important that we also say, when you talk to these stakeholders, to the young people, we should be having clarity to say this is the youth question. Sometimes we talk of the national question, but what is the youth question? What is the agenda that we are trying to push for? I also wanted to comment on the issue of trust based on the interactions, the work that we've also been doing. I think I spoke to issues around leadership, but I think we also have challenges around when you then interface with some of these stakeholders. We have a challenge around ageism. You go there in the community, you're trying to talk to, I'm just giving this as an example, a chief, a councillor. Yeah. This is a young person. Yeah. And there are some people who believe that a leader or someone who should initiate things should be old, should be male. So I think we need to also bring that notion to say young people, they know what they want, they know what needs to be done. So we also have to deal with issues around ageism. And I'm thinking, when we also build this trust, we need to also work around how to also ensure that there are intergenerational conversation between young people and the other generations. Sometimes when you go into a space or a platform, you have these people saying, are these young people, they think they know it all, we have been through this. But I think we need to have those intergenerational conversations where young people can be able to learn from people who have been there, and also the older generations also accepting that times have changed and also learning from young people.
Yeah, interesting. I will